bring us inside if you can. I'm sure you've seen cases similar to this, maybe not at this level, but bring us inside to what the judge might be deliberating, what he might be thinking about, what the two sides are arguing.
But you have a judge that is incredibly thoughtful, meaning he is already, in my view, he's already decided the issue.
Do you know him personally?
I've met him before. Okay. I have a lot of respect for him, his record. You know, he was a county attorney. He was a county prosecutor, and he spent a considerable amount of time prosecuting difficult cases. So he's going to come to the bench with a lot more experience, having been in the trenches. And he's going to decide these issues based on the law and the facts. And he's not someone that's going to worry too much about being flamboyant or saying something clever. He's a humble, jurist in my view. And I think that might be the best thing for someone that's being asked, can we have cameras in the courtroom?
Is he going to be daunted by the nation? I mean, this is a huge case. I mean, The president is watching this case. This has got the attention of people, millions of people across the country. How much of that pressure plays into this too?
Well, there is pressure. One of the last cases I did as a prosecutor was to prosecute the kidnappers of Elizabeth Smart. And it was intense, and there's a lot of eyes on you. But for the most part, the ones that are really most capable of handling that are the ones that don't really care about, making a name for themselves. They're comfortable in their own skin. They understand what their role is. And that's what you want in a judge. And here you have prosecutors that I think are similar. You have defense attorneys that I think are similar. So you're going to see a lot of professionalism. You're not going to see much grandstanding. And I think there's going to be an exercise that reveals that, this is a group of people in charge of an almost impossible task that are going to do it well.
Brett, how do you read where we are at this hour? We haven't heard anything from inside the courtroom right now. I know we're an impatient bunch, those of us in the media, but how do you read that? And do you think we'll get an answer today?
We will. I think this judge is not one that's going to say, I want to take it under advisement. And the reason is, exactly that he understands the nation is watching. He also understands that there's a lot of people that are, their lives are so impacted by this, like the victims of the crime. And that's going to be in the foremost of his mind as he makes a decision, assuming that the law and the facts justify the decision. Right now, what I think they're doing is they're making their arguments, and I think he's taking the time to consider them. I think he'll retake the bench, and he'll issue the ruling fairly quickly.
I do have a question about, there's a big wave of support to have cameras inside the courtroom. Of course, the media wants the cameras inside the courtroom. Erica Kirk desperately wants there to be transparency. Is there any scenario where putting cameras inside the courtroom could backfire for this prosecution? Is there any scenario they're thinking of where this might not work out?
Well, there is in that a couple of things. One, what attention is it going to bring for the juries? Is it going to change the dynamic of the jury's interactions in the case? And you have to be careful. Security becomes a concern, but will it reveal something that might turn out to be something that the defense could use against the prosecution in their pursuit of the case? And that's always a possibility. But I guess my analogy is this. Historically, before cameras, we allowed reporters in, and they wrote down what was happening, and we had guests citizens that were in the courtroom. We live in a day and age that more than the capacity of the building wants to be there. Mm-hmm. And it's a constitutionally protected right that these trials are public. Mm-hmm. So let's let the cameras in. The judge is going to be able to handle any issues that come up, and the prosecution can be confident that they're going to be able to present this without any sort of hindrance or delay or prejudice to the defendant and reach a verdict with a good jury.
Another reason why this case has so much massive attention is the death penalty is on the line here. Talk me through how this might shape the case, how things might go. Is it going to be a slow, arduous process? How is the judge going to make sure that he treats this with care? Because this is not like any other case.
Well, you're right. And there are issues in a death penalty case that present themselves as possible, ways to appeal the conviction if that occurs. So you have to be very careful on every evidence ruling that you make. You're going to see, in my opinion, what you're going to see is the judge is going to bend over backwards to allow the defense to be able to do what they think they need to do in order to properly defend him. And then you're going to present it to the jury. And I think it will happen fairly quickly. I don't think this is a O.J. Simpson length of time trial.
Really?
I think this is something that will happen a lot more quickly. This judge is not he's not gonna wrangle over decisions, and he's also not gonna let it turn into a circus.
Yeah. Well, we keep talking about how much evidence there is already in this case. Want to bring in another piece of evidence here. This is a part of the charging documents. Another text message from Robinson to his roommate here, where he says that he had wished he had circled back and grabbed this rifle as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. I don't know if it had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about prints. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. I mean, this is incredibly self-incriminating.
It is. I mean, it's worse than that, than just incriminating, because it also shows calculation. So then you're getting to what his intent is, and it might be one of the most important pieces in developing his level of criminal intent.
Mm-hmm. Is there any scenario where the defense tries to use his mental state at the time, where he might say that I was deeply affected by depression, or I was going through something, and bring in the roommate that can vouch for this? I mean, is there any scenario where they try to go down that path?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a powerful defense. In Utah, however, in order to show incompetence, you have to be able to show that there is sufficient evidence to show that this individual cannot properly assess the difference between right and wrong. And so that will be the test on whether or not they're successful. His text messages, his behavior, his comments and interactions with other people can all be used as evidence to refute that and to show that he indeed knew the difference between right and wrong. And
you work really closely with law enforcement in Utah as well. They did such a fine job in those hours after this assassination in order to get this to this suspect, and how quickly they worked and how they worked together with the federal authorities. Talk to me about just how important that work was, and how it was so important to get that evidence, the text messages and all these things that some people online still don't believe are true.
Yeah. I mean, this is the kind of stuff we saw prior to 9/11. We actually did see interaction between federal and state authorities to actually work together, and because it takes all of that in order to gather the full landscape of evidence that is left. Now it's almost all digital, the evidence, and so it requires the federal and the state to work really closely together to put their egos aside. I think that happened in this case. I think there was such shock and such disgust and such compassion and empathy for what Erica and her family went through. I think they knew they had to do it the right way and set their egos aside and investigate the case.
I think one of the hardest things to watch Erica go through are the personal attacks, right? And people creating stories about her and potential involvement. I mean, it's gross.
Yeah.
And for her to be so very clear about how she feels that this should go, to not just for everybody watching who's invested in Charlie Kirk, friends and fans and supporters, but for her children, to be able to, one day they're going to be adults, and they won't get to take part in this moment right now inside the courtroom. They won't get to testify. They won't get to give their impact statements. But one day, they'll want to go back and watch.
Yeah, that's right. And, we have the Crime Victims' Rights Act, which does allow Erica to actually go into court. I don't know if she will, but when the judge is ultimately deciding whether cameras are going to be in the courtroom and Erica really wants them, if she desired, she could go into that courtroom and ask the judge to do it.
Mm-hmm. And I asked this question earlier, how much of her desires in this moment right now weigh on this judge that so well? How much is he thinking about that this is the widow, this is what she wants? I mean, this whole case, is centered around a man who, did not deserve to die in the very public way that he did. That video spread like wildfire on social media. It was just awful. How much of that is weighing on him, the wishes of Erica?
I think with this particular judge, it's weighing more so than other judges. He spent part of his career prosecuting cases where individuals were victims of sex crimes. You develop a very strong compassion and understanding of the victims and what they need and what will help them heal. That's why I think it's an important factor for this judge.
Let's play a soundbite actually from Erica Kirk talking about what she needs out of this and the closure.
I don't need closure. I don't need understanding. Evil's evil. I don't have any questions for him. I don't have any questions for his family. I don't. What this boils down to, honestly, is that he made a decision. One day, he decided to let the smallest seed of evil in his heart. He decided not to extinguish that evil. Instead, he decided to feed it. I don't need to ask him why he fed it. Evil is evil, so he kept feeding it to the point where he murders my husband.
And remember that, Grace, because that is the same woman who has forgiven, the suspect in this, Tyler Robinson. She came out shortly after and publicly forgave him.
Yeah, her faith and her resilience, the strength that she displays is admirable. And, I saw that in Elizabeth Smart, for example, and their ability to overcome incredible crime that occurs. I saw it in my own sister, that suffered through, horrific crime. I have a lot of faith in God's ability to help those victims, but it's our job to bring justice and accountability to those who choose to victimize those people.